All right, well, it is the season of thanks. It's the season of Thanksgiving, and I've got to confess something to you. In fact, I confessed it to my family last night because they're the ones that are going to give me the hard time about it. My house has been decorated for Christmas. Yes, it has. It has. Extenuating circumstances, the calendar wasn't working out. But what I've realized, too, is that I do, in fact, enjoy decorating for Christmas. I think we should celebrate Christ's birth all year round, right? And so in the dark of Fannin County, I can put my Christmas lights up and be happy that we are a light to the world in the darkness. But in that, we're looking at this season of giving thanks, this season of Thanksgiving, right? And I want to be mindful of the fact that before we bypass Thanksgiving in the desire to receive, or for my kids, anybody's kids get the Amazon book in the mail? Amazon is making money hand over fist because of that magazine, right? And so my kids, they get this book and they just go in and circle everything. That my daughter thinks it's a game. You have to circle something on every page, right? That you've got to have something. This is what I want on this page and this page, right? And so before we get to the what I want for myself, I think the Bible calls us to be thankful, to be content with what we have, right? And so we've been looking at these Psalms that give thanks to God about what He has done for us or about who He is, right? And so we started 2 weeks ago with Psalm 30, and we looked at the idea that there are scientifically medical research that says that us giving thanks, us being thankful, leads to better mental health, better physical health, better spiritual health, just by taking one time a day and being thankful. But what we've realized is that 2,000 years ago, the Bible told us that same thing. Whatever is pure, whatever is holy, whatever is good, whatever is just, dwell on these things, and the peace of God will inhabit your heart and mind in Christ Jesus, right? That the call in our life is to dwell on these good things, to be thankful of that. That's Philippians 4, right? And so today we're going to look at Psalms 95, and see what Psalms 95 tells us about being a people who are thankful, a people who give thanks. Psalm 95. Verse 1 says, "Come, let's shout joyfully to the Lord. Shout triumphantly to the rock of our salvation. Let's enter His presence with thanksgiving. Let's shout triumphantly to Him in song. For the Lord is great, a great God, a great King above all gods. The depths of the earth are in His hands, and the mountains' peaks are His. The sea is His, and He made it. His hands formed the dry land. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let's kneel before the Lord our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, the sheep under His care. Today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts as at Meribah and as on the day at Massah and in the wilderness, where your ancestors tested me, for they tried me, though they had seen what I did. For 40 years I was disgusted with this generation, and I said, there are people whose hearts go astray. They do not know my ways. So I swore in my anger, they will not enter my rest." So what's interesting about this psalm, I think this psalm kind of builds on itself. If you remember, psalms are songs that were sung in the worship of God, in the worship of Yahweh. And so if I was a Jewish person in the first century, I would come to the synagogue, and part of my daily worship or my weekly worship of Yahweh would be to sing through these songs. And so there would be music, and there would be harps, and there would be lyres, and we would play a background, and these would be the words that are laid over that, right? Kind of like when we sing, "You are holy." It comes from Isaiah chapter 6. "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come," right? That what we're singing there is a quotation from Isaiah chapter 6. In the same way, Psalms then were a quotation, or they're the words now of the songs of worship that they were singing to God, right? So these songs are made for worship. But what I think is interesting about this psalm is that it progresses, it builds on itself. And so the first thing that we learn in the first 5 verses there is a building block to the second thing that we learn. It allows us to do the second thing that we learn in this in verses 5 and 6. And then the third part, if we do the first 2 parts, then we avoid the danger that happens in the third part, right? And so I think we're going to see 3 things today. The first thing that we're going to see is that giving thanks, being thankful, is an activator for worship. Our thanks is an activator for worship. The second thing we're going to see is thanks is an adjuster of our posture. When we give thanks, it changes our posture before the Lord. It changes what we think about ourselves. It changes what we think about God. Thanks is an adjuster of our posture. And thanks is an antidote for hardening. Thanks is an antidote for hardening. So I want to kind of reread verses 1 through 5 here because it keeps building on itself. It says, "Come, let's shout joyfully to the Lord, shout triumphantly to the rock of our salvation. Let's enter his presence with thanksgiving. Let's shout triumphantly to him in song. For the Lord is great, a great king above all gods. The depths of the earth are in his hand. The mountain peaks are his. The sea is his. He made it. His hands formed the dry land." When we see things that are incomprehensible, we can't help but be driven towards worship of God, right? I've seen all sorts of beautiful things in my life. This last week I was reminded, anybody see the Northern Lights? Did you get a picture of the Northern Lights? We're in Texas. We're not in Alaska. And yet the solar storm that created those lights was so great that even here in Fannin County, we could see the majesty of God's creation in the sky, right? That when we see things of beauty, we can't help but be driven towards worship. When we see and we look around and see God's creation, Romans, we're going to look at this in just a second, but Romans says that all of creation is evident to us, that it makes evident a creator God. That when we see things, when we're thankful for beauty, that is an activator for us to be a people of worship. That giving thanks, seeing beautiful things can't help but spur in us a worship of God. One of the things that I think is interesting about this passage is he gives a lot of real estate to the things that God is. He says, "For Yahweh, the Lord, is a great God, Elohim." Yahweh is a great Elohim. He's a great king above all the other gods. And so it's parallelism there, right? We talked about that a couple weeks ago. That when the author repeats phrases, he's trying to drive home a point. And so even when we look at all of the gods in the world, that Yahweh stands above them all. That he is the King of kings is what we call Jesus. That he is the Lord of all other lords. That he is the God of gods. That there's no other thing that is as good as he is. In the time that this text was written, and really still today in some capacity, when people would run up against things that they didn't understand how they worked, they would attribute those things to a god, right? And so you look through the course of history, you see that Ra was the sun god in Egypt, right? That the sun rises and sets, and we don't understand what it is, so it must be Ra that's doing it. This is a god that's happening, right? And then there's a god for the rain that we would celebrate. When the rains come, we would celebrate this god, that this God exists, right? And then when our crops come up, we give thanks to God for a God for these crops, right? And so what people, when they would run up against things that they didn't understand, when they would see these things in nature, they would attribute them to a God, right? And what the psalmist is saying is even all of those things that you don't understand, there's a God who stands above them all. There is a God who is God of those gods, is king of those gods, right? But he gets even more detailed than that. In verse 4, he says, "The depths of the earth are in his hand, And the mountain peaks are his. The sea is his. He made it. His hands formed the dry land. All right, again, he's got some parallelism, right? He talks about the depths of the earth. Where are the depths of the earth, class? Well, the oceans. Yes. If you look at the surface of the earth, the depths of the earth are in the oceans, right? The deepest part of our planet is in the oceans, right? And then he looks at the mountain peaks, right? And that's the highest point of our planet. It says that the mountain peaks are his. And so what the author is doing is saying, not only are the depths his, not only are the peaks his, but in that next verse he says, he made it. The sea is his. He made it. His hands formed those peaks. So in my interest, I did a little research this week, and I'm looking at the depths and the heights of our planet and thinking about creation, and we've been around between 6,000 and a billion years, depending on what you ascribe to. I'm gonna say 6,000. But in that time frame, humanity has existed, right? We have documented things. Do you know how much of the ocean that human eyes have seen? 80% of our planet is ocean. Okay, how much of that have human eyes laid eyes on? Venture a guess. 5%. Somebody said 5%. 5% of the ocean has been seen by human eyes. Okay, so obviously we can't go down deep, right? The pressure becomes too great. It crushes submarines, and so we can't get down there. So we've only seen 5% of the ocean. How much of it has been charted or mapped? Because we can go on top of it, right? We can map out the top, right? How much of the ocean has been charted or mapped? Only 20. 20% of it by humanity has charted or mapped the ocean, right? So humanity doesn't even have a grasp of the depths of the earth, right? We can't even understand it. And yes, the text says the sea is his. He made it. That this God of gods, who is above all things, he's the one that made the sea. Wow, that's unbelievable. Okay, well, let's go then to the peaks, because we can't survive down low, but we can survive on the earth. We can survive on the planet. People go to Mount Everest all the time, right? Okay, how many people in the course of human history have crested Everest and made it back? 7 people total? No. 50 people total? Okay, y'all are a little bit, now you're kind of being reserved. 7,269. 7,260. But you have to understand that there are 8 billion people on our planet. And so over the course of human history, only 7,000 of those people have been able to go up to the peak of Mount Everest, the highest mountain on the planet, right? And so we think, when we look at the depths of the sea, and we see that the sea is his, and he made it. And we look at the peaks of Mount Everest, and we see his hands formed the dry land. It's incomprehensible. When we think about creation, we can't help but be activated towards worship, right? Have you had one of those experiences where you were out in nature, in creation, and you were just moved to worship? I've got so many of them. I thought about a bunch of different stories. But one of them I think will resonate with you as people of the 21st century. So in 2016, my little brother was getting married. And so as the good, best man that I was, I took him and my dad, using my dad's airline points, to California, and we were going to go do some touring of California, right? And so we went through Napa Valley, and we looked at just the acres and acres of vineyards, right? And then we drove to San Francisco, and we saw the greatest thing that mankind can make, the Golden Gate Bridge, right? But the best thing that we did in California was we spent 2 days in Yosemite National Park. Anybody been to Yosemite? Okay. Yosemite National Park is gorgeous. It's unbelievably gorgeous. I was looking at pictures of it the other day, and I said to Robin, we need to go there. And she said, you've already been there. And I was like, yeah, we need to go there. We need to go back. It's gorgeous. But on this hike, and I love hiking. It's one of my favorite things to do in life. On this hike, I can remember going up, and there was this particular trail that we were following because there was a double waterfall. So it was like a stepped waterfall. And that doesn't sound like much, except these stepped waterfalls were each 100 or more feet tall. And so you had a 100-foot waterfall, and then above it was another 100-foot waterfall. And so if you took this hike, you could get all the way up to where these waterfalls fed, where the spring was at the top of this deal, right? And so we're going up this hike, and I'm having a great time. I really wish I would have brought my phone. I'm going up this hike, and I'm having a great time, and I can't believe my eyes. We turn the corner of this hike, and do you know what I'm doing? I'm looking at this waterfall through my phone. Man, this is awesome. I cannot believe this. Are you guys seeing this? I've got a video on my phone of this. This is ridiculous. And so I'm sitting there, and in that moment, it's like God came down and called me a moron. Like, what are you doing? And so I realized in that moment, why am I videoing this? It's because I want people to see how cool I am that I'm at Yosemite. I'm going to post these videos later, and I'm going to curate this little social media thing so that everybody can see it. But what happened to me is it changed my perspective of creation. When I put my phone away, and I don't have pictures of the rest of this trip for some reason, because when I put my phone away and I just stared at this waterfall, I was just blown away by the creation of God. That these mountains are His, that He formed these mountains. And so my thanks in that moment was an activator of worship to me. That I was driven in worship of God. That this 100-foot waterfall is crested in front with a rainbow. And I'm reminded of God's promise for humanity. Because this perfectly clear rainbow is there in the front of this waterfall that's in front of another waterfall, right? That when we see God's creation, that our thanks is an activator for worship. And when we worship, our thanks is an adjuster of our posture. When we go before God in worship, our thanks before Him is an adjuster of our posture. Verse 6, the psalmist picks up on that same thing. Come, let's worship and bow down. Let's kneel before the Lord our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, the sheep under His care. What's the parallelism in these verses? It's a posture of worship. Do you know what the Hebrew word is for worship? We're going to do some good Hebrew this morning. Clear out your throats a little bit. The Hebrew word for worship, I'm going to say it, then you're going to repeat it after me. Shachach. Okay? Shachach. That's what we translate into the English word worship. I spit a little bit there when I was saying that. But this Hebrew word for worship doesn't mean the thing that we've come to think it means. It doesn't mean just singing. It doesn't mean this. It's a position of posture before the Lord. And so shachach, translated literally, means to fall down prostrate before God. Because it is an adjuster of your posture. To worship God puts you in the right perspective. To worship God changes your posture before Him. Because I'm not the one that's worthy of worship here. That you are. That I'm not the one that's worthy of even looking at you. That you are. When I come before the Lord and worship, shachach, then that's to fall prostrate before the Lord. It changes my position before Him. The reason we have the English word worship is it was translated into Old English as two words, worth and ship. Worth-ship. So worth means what it still means in English. Ship means to ascribe that to something. Worth-ship, to ascribe worth to something. And so when we come before the Lord in worship, what we're doing is we are ascribing worth to God. But the parallelism doesn't start there. The first posture is to fall prostrate before the Lord. The second word is bow down. All right, here's another Hebrew word for you. Karah. No? Karah. There we go. Very good. All right. So that means to bow down before the Lord. Again, it changes your posture. And so what this means is you are down on two knees and you are face down to the ground, right? When we think about old, movies about Pharaoh coming through, or you look and watch the 300, I don't recommend you watch the 300, but when Artaxerxes comes through, what do the people do? They bow down before him, that you are more powerful than I am. And so I'm not worthy to even look at you. I'm going to drop to my knees. I'm going to get lower than you. That nobody can be at the same level of the king. When the king comes by, people drop to their knee in submission, in authority. The psalmist is saying, worship the Lord, lay prostrate. Bow down before the Lord. You're not his equal. You're not worthy of being at the same level of him. Drop to your knees, bow down. And the third one, the third word here, it says, let's kneel before the Lord our Maker. The word kneel is the Hebrew word barak. Yeah, you guys are good at Hebrew. Y'all should take a class. Barak, right, that is to take a knee like this. And so what happens when you come before a king and you're going to be knighted? You take a knee, you bow your head, they touch your shoulders, right? That I'm going to serve the king here, but it's a position where he is going to give me a blessing, right? It's a kneeling before the king. And so when we give thanks, when we worship, it's an adjuster of our posture. Because the danger that you and I face every single day is to put ourselves back in the driver's seat. I don't want to submit to the Lord. I want to be in control. I don't want to live according to what his word has called me to live. I want to make the decisions. And that's the lie that existed in Genesis 3. God's holding out on you. He knows it'll be good for you. Don't you think it'll be good? And it was pleasing to her eyes. And so she took and she ate. And she gave some to her husband. Because she wanted to be in control. And so what happens when we give thanks to God, when we worship God, it changes our posture before him. That we're reminded, I'm not the one that's all powerful here. I'm not the one that's in control. I'm not the one that made the depths of the sea, that made the peaks of the earth. I'm not the one that did that. But I serve one who does. And so my position, my posture before the Lord changes. I give thanks, and my thanks adjusts my posture. Do you remember the movie The Lion King? This is the best way I could think about illustrating this. In the movie The Lion King, in the beginning of the movie, Simba and Nala are playing, and there's very clear instructions that everywhere that the light touches is our kingdom. But that where the light doesn't touch, you're not allowed to go there, right? And so Simba, he's a big bad boy now, right? He's learned how to growl a little bit. He can scratch. And so he and Nala, they're going to play this game where they're going to go test out the Darklands, right? And so they go and they make it to the Darklands and they're seeing all these things. And then Nala says, hey, we probably should go back. And Simba says, no way, I'm going to experiment. And then the little bird that's not Iago, I can't remember the bird's name, flies in. And the bird says, hey, you guys need to go back. This is dangerous. And you remember what Simba says? Danger? Ha! I laugh in the face of danger. Ha 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 ha! Because Simba's in control. Simba's powerful. Simba's the one. He knows, right? Well, what happens? The hyenas show up. And all of a sudden, Simba's in water that he can't swim. He is seeing a situation that he has gotten himself in that is over his head, right? So he takes off running. The hyenas take off chasing him. They're running through the Darklands. And all of a sudden, they get to a point that they can't climb anymore. Their backs are to the wall. The hyenas are coming in, and they're about to eat them. And you know what Simba does? He roars. Rah! And the hyenas start laughing. So he tries it again. And then you hear this roar, right? You remember that? Was it Simba that changed? No, it's Mufasa showed up. The big guy, right? What Simba did is he realized, this is Daddy that can protect me. It's not me. I can't do it. I've tried. It's my dad that can do it. I think the danger for us as humanity is to look at situations and think, I got this. I've been here before. I can do this again. And what worship does is it draws us back into the proper posture before the Lord. It's not me. I don't got this. But He does. The one who holds the depths in His hands. The one who formed the peaks. The one who is God of gods and King of kings and Lord of lords, who also cares about me. My worship puts me in the right posture. So thanks is an adjuster of our posture. Thanks is an activator for worship. And thanks is an antidote to hardening. Look at verse 8. Today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts as at Meribah, as on the day at Massah in the wilderness, where your ancestors tested me. They tried me, though they had seen what I did. For 40 years I was disgusted with this generation. And I said, they are a people whose hearts go astray. They do not know my ways. So I swore in my anger, they will not enter my rest. There's an interesting thing that happens here linguistically. The perspective shifts. Did you catch that perspective shift? It went from us and our and me and my to I was there and they will not enter. Because this is now God speaking. And do you remember the story that happens at Meribah and Massah? Do you remember that story? Let me overview it for you real quickly. The Egyptians the Israelites had entered Egypt at a time when it was favorable for them to do so. They were immigrants into this land. And so they came in, and as immigrants, they began to flourish under the rule of Pharaoh. But 400 years passed by, and Pharaoh no longer remembered why these immigrants were here. And so he began to put a heavy burden on them. He began to force them into slavery. He began to make their slavery difficult, that if they were going to make bricks, he wasn't going to provide the materials. Not only were they going to make bricks, but they had to go provide the materials for themselves. And then, on top of that, he was afraid of them overpopulating, so he took all of the male children and killed them. You remember this story? That things were awful in Egypt for the Israelites. It was a bad time for them. And so God raised up from them one who was going to come in and lead them out. And God Himself performed miraculous plagues on the Egyptians in order to get them out. And God Himself came through Egypt and killed the first one of everyone who didn't have the blood on his doorposts. And then God Himself led them out of Egypt. And God Himself went before them and parted the Red Sea. And God Himself allowed them to cross over on dry land. And God Himself closed the water back. Then God Himself led them by a pillar of fire by day, or a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. And then God Himself, when they were hungry, provided food that they didn't even have a name for. They called it, what is this stuff? What is it? Manna rained down from heaven. God Himself fed them. And then when they complained about not having enough meat, God Himself provided enough meat. And so they've seen miracle after miracle after miracle, and then they get to Meribah and they say, we're going to die out here of thirst. It was better for us back in Egypt. Do you remember those good things that we had in Egypt? Do you remember all the good meat that we had, all the fun that we had? It was better for us back in Egypt. And so God Himself provides water out of a rock for them to drink. And they drank their fill, and then they go on about their life, and then they get to Massah, and they do the same thing. It was better for us back in Egypt, they claim. Because here's the problem. When the miraculous becomes mundane, hearts are hardened. When the miraculous becomes mundane, our hearts are hardened. And so what happened with these people is over a period of time, they began to reject these miraculous things that God had done in favor of the things that they could do for themselves. And so they hardened their hearts. And the punishment for that, even for Moses, who hardened his heart, was that they didn't get to enter into the promised land because they didn't trust in God's promise. That they hardened their hearts. Do you know what that phrase means? Don't harden your heart today, as long as it's called today. Do you know what that phrase means, harden your heart? It means to slowly allow sin to creep into your lives. Do you know that big, mega, major sins you don't just wake up one day and that happens, right? You don't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to embezzle $150,000 from my company, right? That doesn't happen. You don't just wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You don't wake up one day and decide, I'm going to go and rob a bank. Those things don't happen. You don't wake up like that. But they do happen incrementally because people do embezzle from their company. People do rob and kill and cheat and steal. Those things happen. Why does it happen? Because they allow their hearts to slowly be hardened over time towards those ends. I took a class in seminary that was dealing with administrative issues in the church. And my professor told the story of a good leadership kid at a college ministry that he worked at. And he said, we were talking specifically about how do you steward and protect the finances of the church. And he said that this kid was a leader in our college ministry. This kid was the kid that you wanted in your college ministry. They were doing all the things that you wanted to do. They were leadership. They were staying late. They were coming up to the church and volunteering. They were doing this, this, and this. And so one day after church, the college group decided they were going to go eat lunch out. And this kid realized, man, I left my wallet at home. And so he knows where the petty cash is stored. He's going to be back here tomorrow. He's got the cash at home. He just left it at home. And so he goes and skims off the top, $20 out of the petty cash, puts it in his pocket, goes, eats lunch, and then comes back the next day and pays it in, right? Fast forward about 2 weeks, the student group is going to go out and eat lunch again. This time the kid doesn't have the money. But hey, nobody caught me last time. So he goes into the petty cash and he skims off $20. He puts it in his pocket and he goes out. This kid wasn't some sort of hardened criminal. But the result of his action was he ended up stealing thousands of dollars from this church. Not because he was some sort of bad guy. He was the guy that you wanted in your college ministry. But because his heart had slowly been hardened. That's the danger of sin. That when sin goes unchecked in our hearts, in our minds, it begins to harden our hearts. And so it becomes easier. I have less conviction next time and less conviction next time until eventually I'm not even concerned about this. But what the psalmist is warning against is today, don't let your heart be hardened. Do you understand that this is an imperative command that is an ongoing action? Don't let your heart be hardened continually. Today, don't let your heart be hardened. And the antidote to that is a worship of God. It's understanding our posture before Him. That I'm not the one that hung the heavens. I'm not the one that formed the earth. And so when I am in an appropriate posture with God, it allows me to have this antidote of hardening, right? And so that's what thanks does in our lives. Thanks is an activator for worship. This week, my hope is that you will be in a situation where you look around and see the goodness of God. Maybe it's your daughter. For me, I walk into a room, and when I walk into the room, my daughter looks at me and is just overjoyed. I'm not some sort of majestic guy, but she's with mom all the time, and so when she sees me, she's overjoyed, right? To me, I'm so pleased in that, but I'm also drawn towards what a good God. What a merciful God who has allowed me to raise these children. That children are a blessing from the Lord. That when we see things in creation, that creation is an activator towards worship, right? That when we give thanks, that giving thanks is an adjustment of our posture. that we realize it's not about who we are or what we're doing. It's about who God is and what He's done. And that by giving thanks, we receive the antidote to our hardened heart. Today, don't let your hearts be hardened. Give thanks.